So as you know, my name is Kainton, the Tech Pro, and today I'm going to be taking you through how to build a CQRS and event sourcing based application. This is a way to build application for the future. In fact, I believe that in the next few years, many organizations and developers are going to migrate to this style or approach of building applications. So let me just show you. So we are going to be doing this step by step. This is meant to be a beginner class. So I'm going to show you a complete scenario how to build an application using CQRS and event sourcing style using Axon Framework, because that's a tool for building CQRS and event sourcing based application. So now I'm going to start this application and let me just show you what we are going to be building. So once it starts up, I'm going to go to the port. I think the port should be port 8080 HTTP localhosts. It should be port 8087, and I think I should go to index. So now this is what we are trying to achieve. So this is a simplified order fulfillment application. So somebody places an order is created, it is fulfilled, and then the stock is deducted from the stock and it appears in the list of orders. So for now we have, for instance, we have this toy cars for kids. Let me expand the screen a little bit. And I place order for toy cars for kids, and I say yes, place order, and you can see that it appears right here and it's been deducted to, the stock now goes down to 99, right? So this style of building application using CQRS and event sourcing is super fast and is also very scalable. It's really so great. In case you don't know, CQRS means Command Query Responsibility Segregation. Now see what happens. See the benefit of this this style of building application. If you are doing shopping online, let's say you go to Amazon and you try to buy something, the first thing you do is you browse through the products, you check the color, you are searching through for some time, and after a very long time, you are very sure, you now place the order. So basically, you do a whole lot of queries. Before you do one single transaction, you have done a whole lot of searches. So that's why we say the query to command ratio is really always very high. So if we're able to separate the two databases, the two data stores into two parts, exclusively we have one for queries, for handling queries, high volume of queries coming every time, and we have another one which is optimized to handle commands or writes or kind of updates or insertions. So that makes for very good scalability. So this one handling queries can be scaled up as need may be, and this one handling commands can be scaled up as need may be. So we want to separate command query responsibility segregation. And event sourcing represents the write database. So once you do this separation, we call this one the read database, and we call this one the write database. And is another name for it is called the event store, because we are saying that what goes to the event store is like whatever happens is saved in the event store as events, something that happens. So it's going to become clear as we go. So let's go ahead to get started. The first thing you need to do is to download and set up Axon Framework. So if you go to Axon Framework, if you go to their website and you go to their Axon Framework, Axon IQ download, you go down, you can see there are two ways you can set up Axon Server. Axon Server kind of helps us to hold the event store, right? So we are using the two database systems now, two databases as it may be, or two data stores. I'm going to be using SQL. In this case, I might be using H2 or MySQL for the read, and I'm also going to be using Axon Server for the event store. So to set up Axon Server on your system is really very simple. If you have Docker installed on your system, simply run this command: docker run -z --name Axon Server bind the ports, and then run it, and it starts up Axon Server container on Docker, and that is what I'm using right now. So you can see it is running right here. But I also have used Windows. I've used it on Windows as well, what you simply do, download this file right here. If you download it, you simply run it using, okay, the command is not here, but the command is java-jar AxonServer.jar. If you run this command in the when you've navigated to the directory where you have this Axon server downloaded, it's going to start up exactly like I have now. So once you've set up Axon server, you can check that Axon server is running by going to HTTP and go to localhost at port 8024 and you can see that it's running. If I go to overview, you can see one application is running right here. Okay, so let's just go ahead to get started in this demo application, and I'm going to be explaining as I go. So this is going to be a practical class, and I'm going to be explaining as I go. If you want to read more, everything is explained clearly in my website right here. So the first thing I would like to do, let me kind of arrange my windows first. So let me keep this one this side, and then I'm going to come here, and maybe I'm just going to close this project, or maybe I can just leave it open for now. But let me just close all open files, close all. Again, I want you to take note of the arrangement of the what's it called, of the packages in this application. Of course, we are going to be doing it, but just take note of it. I would like to recommend you subscribe to my website. If you've not subscribed to my website, maybe you can subscribe so that you don't miss any update when I make new updates. So let's go down this journey right now. If you have any challenges, leave me a comment in the comment box below, and I'll help you. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to first, maybe I can just close this one. Maybe I'll open it later on. So I'm going to just terminate. All right, so we have, I'm going to create a new project at this time. I'm going to start a new project, and I'm going to say next. The group ID com.Kyneton the genius. The name, I can just call it CQRS tutorial. Okay, CQRS tutorial, you can give it any name, but if you stick with me, that will make it easy for you to debug when we encounter errors, because sometimes we might encounter some errors for CQRS. Now pay attention to the dependencies I'm going to be adding. So I'm going to be adding Lombok to make it easier for us to write our codes, to reduce the lines of code we are going to be writing. And I also need Spring Web. I need JPA because we are going to be using database, and we are going to also be needing H2. H2 is an in-memory database. It makes it easy to, when you are developing an application, to test and to see how your application works on development. So it's really so fast. So I use it for development. When you want to use go to production, you can use exactly the same settings, but simply change the database configuration. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. All right, so Spring Web, Lombok, yeah, Thymeleaf, because we are going to be also doing some we are going to also be designing the UI using Thymeleaf. All right, so I'm going to go finish. So this is have started. Permit me to just open. Just take this one out. Okay. Okay, so it's given two tabs here, which I'm not sure what to do with them. All right. All right, so we have our new application has been created right now. What I would like us to do is to make sure we follow the step-by-step in the website so that we don't miss out anything. So I'm going to adjust this, and I'm going to kind of allow the website to also display side by side. All right, so here we go. All right, so we will build a complete application with CQRS and Axon Framework. I will help you understand how it works. We build the API and we build the UI. Now we are also employing microservices I'm going to be explaining. So we are going to separate the UI from the API. These are two different things. So the transaction steps permit me to just read a bit of the transaction steps. A user clicks on order now. A REST request is raised and sent to the controller. The other controller creates a new command and sends it via the command gateway onto the command bus. The command is now routed to the command handler by the command bus. So the other command handler creates a new order based on the detail received. This is event source. It's event sourced. When the new order is created, it is persisted in the right DB via the order repository. The repository insert emits an order created event. Now, using the product ID, we retrieve the particular product aggregate from the repository. The retrieved product can now execute its update stock command to update the new based on the parameter of the using the update stock command as a parameter. Okay. Now at this point the stock is deprecated, that is the stock is reduced based on the number of orders that was placed, and this change is effected in the repository and persisted in the right DB. Now this tends to make it a bit confusing, so let's leave it. Let's just continue doing the step by step, and then I'll be explaining as I go. So we want to create the read and the write models, right? Okay. So the first thing we want to do is to go to create the folder structure. Is you go to src main java. So the first thing I want to create is a C. Yeah. So let's create a new package, and I'm going to call it readdb. Readdb, yeah, read model. Let's call it read model. So this read model is basically represents the data that will be stored in the read database, in the query side of the database of the data store. And I'm going to create new class. Is it going to be a Java class? And that's going to be the product we want to store, and we are going to call it ProductSummary. Now the data you store in this read database and the write database, they're almost the same. So the convention is we call what we store in the read DB ProductSummary, and what we store in the write DB, the write model, we call it product. We just call it the name of the object or the name of the entity, but for the read DB we attach summary to it. That is the convention. We also need another class, this time the OrderSummary. Yeah, the OrderSummary. Okay. So we have our read models, and now we are going to create to write the POJO. So permit me to shift this and also to shift this a bit to this side. Let me increase the font. So in case of let me start with the product. I'm going to increase the font a little bit, and I'm going to use @entity annotation. And I'm also going to use the @data annotation, so that it's helped me create the data, the getters and the setters. And I'm going to also use @noax constructor. So a product has a price, it has an ID, it has a stock, number of items available, and it also has a description. So let's just do that. Of course, you know that you need to use ID annotation for the primary key. So the primary key is gonna be a string. So private string ID. Now I'm typing everything out because that is the best way to be a good programmer instead of to copy and paste. So I'm going to also say private double stock, private integer, private double price. I mean, that's going to be price, private integer stock, and private string description. All right, so this is our product summary. And now let's generate our all ags constructor. I'm simply going to right click and say generate constructor. And no, this is not right. I'm going to right click and say generate constructor. No, it should give me an option to generate constructor based on the, let's see, all right, for some reason it's not giving me that option, so I'm going to simply copy it from here and paste there. So I'm going to copy the constructor and paste it. This dot description, private string description, so Java is case sensitive. So we have the read model for the product, all right? So let's do the same thing for the order summary. So I'm going to go to order summary and we are going to do the same thing. So permit me to just copy the annotations from here and use it as well in the order summary. All right, so in the case of order summary, we need the ID, the price, and the number of items ordered. So I'm going to say at ID annotation, private string ID and private double price and private integer number of items orders. All right, and we also, now we need to do some relationship between the two because an order has a product, right? So we also need private product summary, summary, all right? So this is a relationship and it's going to be a one to many, or it's going to be one, is a many orders to one product, right? So you can place many orders for one product. So it's going to be at many to one, at many to one. So many orders, one product. So, and we also need another column, which is going to be the product ID. This is also very important. So I'm going to say private string product. For some reason, I'm using lowercase all for everything. This is for a reason I've explained in a different video I've made. So I'm going to say here at join column, the join column is going to be the product ID. So the join column is going to be this column, which represents the product ID, which is actually this ID right here coming from the product table, product summary table. And we have to do insertable false and updatable false. And updatable false, okay. Let me make some room here, all right. Okay, so now we have our summaries now. And let's see, so this is where we are. We've created our read model. So if you go back to the architecture, we've created the read DB, the read model, which actually will store data in the read DB right here. So this is the easy one. This is something you already know. All right, we've not gone into actual CQRS, the core CQRS. Now let's go into the write model now. Now the write model is the actual is a product this time that will be in charge of doing event sourcing. So we call it the aggregate. So this aggregate will be in charge of receiving commands and also handling events that come in. So if a command comes into product, it's going to respond or handle that command. So this aggregate is going to have command handlers and also event sourcing handlers. I'm going to be now writing and explaining as I go. So basically, the product summary we already wrote is similar to what we are also going to be writing now. But in this case, we now need to make it command handler to make it handle commands as well. So I'm going to go back to my to the packages, and I'm going to create a new package. I'm going to call it write_model, and here in write model I'm going to create a new class. This time I'm going to call it product, and now this will be our aggregate. What is an aggregate? An aggregate is simply a group of entities that are kept in a consistent state. This is actually a very theoretical definition. So an aggregate is simply basically an entity that might contain other entities. For instance, a product might contain like order. Let's use order for instance. Order will contain a product, which is a product that is ordered. So in that case, the definition is clear. So for any aggregate, we're going to annotate it with the aggregate. Oh yeah. So we need to add one more dependency, which is the Axon Framework dependency. So I'm going to go to, can actually get it from the website right here, Axon Framework 4.2.1. Maybe I'm just going to copy it from here, but I don't know if this is the latest version. But let me just copy it anyway. So for us to be able to use Axon Framework features for CQRS, we need to add the dependency. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm adding it to my pom.xml file, and I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to reload re-import the dependencies, and it will download to the class path all the necessary dependencies. So if I go to the product aggregate right now, I'm going to annotate. Let's get back to where we are. This is where we are. So I'm going to be explaining this code, and you have to pay attention to this explanation I'm going to be giving right now. So you are going to annotate with @aggregates. @aggregates is coming from Axon Framework, the Spring, the stereotype. Okay. And now basically we have about almost the same fields that we have in the product summary. However, the fields that you need to include in the aggregate will be fields that you are sure they will be changing by commands. So what we are saying in effect is the fields that you are going to include here, they are fields that will change by certain commands here. So if these fields are not going to be affected by a command, then you are not going to include them. So for now, all the fields are affected by command because we are going to be doing add products. If you add a product, you need all the fields. So here we need about the same thing. So I'm going to save to kind of save our time. I'm going to just copy everything across. Let me just copy everything and paste. All right. And in this case now, instead of using @id identifier for the primary key, and now here we don't use the term primary key, we use the term aggregate identifier. And the aggregate identifier have to be annotated with annotation aggregate identifier, which is the second one right here. In case of the read, in case of the product summary, we annotate with id for persistence, as we've been doing. But in this case now, this is an aggregate we are talking about. Axon Framework requires that we have a default no argument constructor. So let me just create it. It's a requirement. So I'm going to just create this no args constructor. All right. Fine. Now we need commands and events. So now what we have here is aggregate, but I think commands and events should come before the this aggregate. Why? Because aggregates handle commands, and this commands has to already exist. That means that I'm going to create another package where I'm going to be placing my commands and events. Commands are simply things that happen, operations that occur. An event simply is a notification that an operation have occurred, right? So I'm going to call this package, the API is going to contain the list of commands. A command is something like create a new product, or update the stock, and increase price and things like that. Things that make changes, to make persistent changes to the data store, is their commands. So that's why we have to put our commands into a file. So I'm going to create a Kotlin file. I'm going to call it commands. All right. So I'm just going to configure these, configure all modules, say OK, and I think this should be fine. I'm going to take these out. Yeah, I think it should be okay. So I'm going to save all, and I'm going to go back to my commands. I'm going to now click on ignore here. All right, so increasing the font a little bit. Now we have a number of commands. In case of we have to have order created. Sorry, create order is a command. Add product, update stock, update increase price, and whole lot of them. So as a homework, figure out other commands that may be necessary for such an application for order fulfillment. For simplicity, we are going to use only 3 of these commands. So the first one, let me see. So I have, yeah, perfect. So I'm going to take all these. So I'm going to simply copy them across, because this is going to save us a great deal of time. And when I copy them across, then maybe I can now explain. So let me just import. Fine. So when we are creating a new order, what do we need? We need all the fields for the order. For instance, we need the order ID, we need the price, we need the number of items being ordered. We also need the product ID being ordered. When we're adding a new product, we need the ID of the product, the price, the stock, and description for that product. For simplicity, that is okay. We want to update the stock. We want to add some stock to the stock of products. We simply need the ID of the stock we want to increase, and number of items in integer we want to add. And for the IDs of the aggregates that we are going to be targeting for this command, we have to annotate with target aggregate identifier. Okay, so that is a Spring annotation coming from modeling.commands. All right, so we need events. For every command, we must emit an event. So that is a must. For every command you write, you must emit an event. So I'm going to go to the same API and create a new file, and this time I'm going to call it events. So the corresponding event for the commands has a name like past tense, because yeah, events are simply a report of something happened. So I'm going to copy this, all the 3 events. Now you can do more if you want. Just figure out more events and commands that may be necessary, and I'm going to paste this right here. All right. So I hope you are following at this point. So we have all these commands and events. Actually, in CQRS and Event Sourcing based applications, commands and events are the watchwords. They are the core of the architecture. All right, what next? The next is that we'll define event handlers. We also create the controller file that receives requests from the client. It's covered in the next part. At this point, we are going to scroll back up. Now, we were building the product, which we call the command model. And this product here is available. We place it in the right model, and we place ProductSummary in the read model. So they are about almost the same thing, but a little bit different. The product is an aggregate, whereas the ProductSummary is just an ordinary entity that we store in a database. All right, so we need to handle the command for creating a new product. And these command handlers are placed in the aggregate. So here in the product aggregate, we need the command handler for creating a new product. So I'm going to say public product. So this is basically a constructor. And this will handle a command called addProduct command, CMD. All right, so when this command occurs, we simply raise an event. So I'm going to say apply apply new product added event, and let me just get the import static method is okay. So we have cmd.getID, we have cmd.getPrice, and we have cmd.getStock, and finally cmd.getDescription. The reason is because the add product command takes 4 parameters, and these parameters are coming from the add product event takes 4 parameters, and the command must provide the events with the parameters. All right, and this is a command handler, right? So we are going to annotate with add command handler. Right? That makes sense. Also in the product aggregate, we need to write another command handler that's going to handle update stock command. So I'm going to say add command handler. This time is going to be public handle. Now for command handlers that are not the constructor, the name of this command will be handle. I mean, the name of these command handler functions or methods will be handle. So handle update stock command cmd, and it takes the same way. We apply new. Yeah, now this is very important. Before we apply anything, we are going to check. We are going to check this update stock. We're going to check updates stock command. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so when we are updating stock, because update stock command is when a new order is created and we are trying to deprecate the stock. You cannot deprecate the stock with a number of items that is greater than what is available, right? So if what is coming, the number of items being ordered is greater than the stock, then it will not work. We are going to raise an error. We're only going to update the stock with a new order if what is ordered is less than the stock. So that's what we're going to check. We're going to check if this.stock is greater than whatever is being ordered. If this.stock is greater than the what is being order being placed, then yeah, so in that case we can update. So I'm going to now say we now update, apply new stock updated event, and we specify cmd.getID and cmd.getStock. All right. Let me just make sure everything is fine. Okay, I'm going to put this here. Why do I have this? Public void. We need a return type. That's fine. So else, we're going to raise an error saying throw new runtime exception out of stock. Okay. So in this case, what is being ordered, or the order being created that is raising the update stock command, is actually greater than the stock, right? So we are going to throw an exception. So we've handled add a new product command, we've handled update stock command, and the next thing we are going to be talking about is event sourcing handlers. What does this event sourcing handlers do? They are responsible for writing or persisting onto the event store, all right? Because we are saying we have event store, we also have this other read database, all right? So once you do event source and aggregate, it's going to update it's going to write into the event store. So I'm going to start by saying, so the event sourcing handlers have a name on, right? On when a stock is updated, when an event occurs, update the event store. So that's why their name is on. So I'm going to say public void on stock updated event. Stock updated event. On stock updated event, what do? We are going to simply update the aggregate. So I'm going to say id is equal to evt.getID, and so it's going to be this, and the stock. This time we are going to reduce the stock, so I'm going to say equal to stock minus evt.getStock. So we simply reduce the stock, okay. And I'm going to annotate with @event sourcing handler. All right, that makes sense. All right, so the next event sourcing handler is going to handle when a product is added. So I'm going to say event sourcing handler public void on product added event evt. So in this case, you're going to set everything id is equal to evt.getID, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to kind of copy this and paste because this is going to waste my time. So let me just copy everything and paste. All right, so we've set up our aggregate, we've set up our read model, we've set up our write model. Okay, we need to do the same for orders. So let's see. So we have the write model, we have the product, which is what we worked on right now. So we need to do this thing for orders as well. But in case of orders, we have only one command, order created command and order created event. So I'm going to create a new Java class, and this is going to be the order aggregate, and I'm going to, first you need to, let me just increase the font a little bit. You're going to annotate with aggregates, and in the case of the order, we need a number of things. We need the order ID, we need the price, we need the number of items ordered, and we need the product ID as well. So this is not a perfect application. It's not ideal, but because there may be some things you might notice, but we are trying to make sure you understand the concept to as much extent you understand the concept. So an order is going to have an ID. Now people will be placing several orders every day, maybe every hour you have several orders being placed on the application, and that means that we cannot keep track of these orders easily. So let's use a UUID and a universally unique identifier. So it's going to be generating the order IDs for us instead of for us to be manually tracking it. So the order ID is going to be private UUID order ID, all right, and private double price, and we also have private integer, integer number of items ordered, and private string product ID. All right, and now we also need to have the target aggregate identifier. Let me not make that mistake. So target aggregate identifier was what we used in the commands, but here we are now using aggregate identifiers. So let me take out this because it's redundant. All right, so we need a command for creating a new order. So I'm going to say command handler, you already know this, and it's going to be public order, because this is the the constructor this time. So I'm going to say create order command cmd, and for create order command we are going to apply. Just give me 1 second. Let me just make sure. Apply new. Apply is a function, is a static method. Aggregate lifecycle static method. So import static method. Let me just get this thing clear. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go back to product here. I'm going to just copy this because it's going to be this. So I'm going to copy it and take it across here. This is order, so it should be fine. Apply. New, let's correct it as we go. So it's going to be new order created event. So it's going to be this one, new order created events, and we need to have cmd.getOrderID, cmd.getPrice, cmd.getNumber, and cmd.getProductID, and that is just fine. All right, so these apply. Yeah, import static method. Okay, so that's it. So it's gonna be aggregate lifecycle.apply. All right. Create other command cmd. Why is it giving us an error? Public command handler. Let me just. Sometimes these errors can actually be confusing. Create order. So it's gonna be create order command. So this is correct. So I'm not going to worry about this. All right. So the next thing we are going to do is to event sources, because to event source this command. So I'm going to say at event sourcing handler. So I'm going to, and we mentioned that event sourcing handlers have the name, they are functions that have the name on. So I'm going to say public void on order created event EVT. So it simply updates the aggregate. So I'm going to say order ID is equal to EVT.getID. Price is equal to EVT. And number is equal to EVT.getNumber. And finally, product ID is equal to EVT.getProductID. All right. So this is going to be semicolon here, not comma. Why do we have this error here? Okay, so the order ID it says required UUID, but is provided a string. So the order ID is going to be a UUID. So, however, in the order created event, I think we use, let's see. So you have this order ID is going to be UUID. All right. Okay, so we also have order created events. So let me save everything first. Order created events, C. Order created event should be UUID, right? That is fine. Right. So why do we have this error here? Says required UUID provided string. So cmd dots apply new. what of other created commands? Create other commands. Okay, so there is going to be a UUID as well here. All right, so all the problems should go away right now. So we've created our commands, we've created our event, we've created our aggregate, and we've created our read models. Okay, so what is left? We now have to do the event handlers, and we also need the controller as well. So we are going to be moving to the next part at this point. So I'm going to go next. I think I have a next button somewhere down here. So let me go next. Yeah, so this is part 2. So I'm going to click next. All right, so now we are going to create the queries and interfaces, the component to handle events and queries as a query package, and we have the controllers to handle requests coming from the browser. All right. So to begin this part, we need to create the controller, and we need to create the queries package. So, all right. So let's come back here. Sorry, take all this. So let me collapse these to all of these. So I'm going to right click and create a new package. So this package, I'm going to be calling it query. It's going to be my query package. And so let's just take some time to read. The query contains the API, the order projector, and the product projector. We're going to be talking about this in a minute. Queries and interfaces will need 2 queries, one query to retrieve a list of products and the other query to retrieve a list of orders. Both queries are defined as data classes. We also need 2 repositories that extend the API repository. This will interface with the read model to handle data persistence, and they will also be used to handle queries to retrieve data from the read DB. So these normal queries will be interfacing with the repository. So I'm going to, in the query package, I'm going to create a new Kotlin class. I'm going to call it API. So this is where I'm going to put all our queries for this application. So all the queries have to be in this API package. So we need in this API file. So we need a class that is going to be GetOrdersQuery. So that's a query to retrieve a list of orders, and we also need, I'm going to increase the font a little bit, class GetProductsQuery. All right, so interface. So at this point we have 2 queries, and these 2 queries they are going to be interfacing with the repositories. So we need 2 interfaces. Just give me a second. Let me shift this one back. OrderSummary repository is going to extend the API repository, and it's going to be OrderSummary. The primary key type for OrderSummary is, it can be string, no problem. And let's just make sure. And we also need to do the same for the ProductSummary repository, JPA repository, ProductSummary string. All right, so here we go. So we have all our queries provided here in the API. So in case you have other queries you want, maybe you want to get product by ID, you want to get product by anything, or you want to get product for certain dates, all the queries can come here. So what I'm trying to show is the standard for building CQRS-based applications. So all these packages I'm creating, once you have them, you can simply update them with any other functionality you might want. Let's now go to the component. the first component is going to be the OrderProjector will contain two event handlers for product added events and stock updated events. So we need event handlers, and it will also have one query handler to handle the query to retrieve a list of products. All right, so we are going to create the where we have these event handlers and query handlers. We call is going to be in a component, and we call it projector. So again, we want to handle events related to the orders. We have the OrderProjector. All the events and queries related to the order is placed in the OrderProjector, and all the orders and queries related with the product is placed in the ProductProjector. So that's the convention, and you place these projectors inside the. Give me 1 second. You place them inside the queries package. So it's going to be a Java class. It's going to be OrderProjector. We also need another one. It's going to be ProductProjector. So I don't really know why I don't have these things in my website. Okay, you can actually get them from my GitHub repository, but for now I'm going to be writing it and also be explaining as I go. So let's start with the OrderProjector. What does the OrderProjector do? First, it's going to be a component. No. So I'm just. All right. So it's not command handler, but it's going to be a component. So because this is going to be used by the commands and events. So now, since we are going to be creating our event handlers here, and these event handlers, when events are raised, the events are raised and sent through an event gateway. So we need an event gateway in this class. So I'm going to say private events gateway, event gateway. And we also need the repository as well, because when events occur, we'll need to persist the readDB and also raise events that will go through the events gateway to other models that may want these events, that may be interested in this event. So I'm going to say private. This is OrderProjector. So we're going to need OrderSummary repository. All right. So let's just call it repository. And I also need. I have to inject do constructor injection. So let me see if it helps me. Okay, perfect. I need the two of them. All right. So we have the constructor injected now. We have the event gateway created as well. So the next thing we want to do, we need an event handler for handling when order created events, so that we can emit this event to any other models or that may be or components that may be interested in this event. So we need an event handler to handle order created events. So I'm going to say public void. So event handlers and event sourcing handlers, these are two different things, but they have the name on order created event EVT. So what happens here, we need to, when an order is created, we need to create a new order summary that is going to be written into the read DB. So I'm going to say order summary summary equal to new order summary. New order summary. Of course, you know that order summary requires parameters. So we have the order ID and a whole lot of other things. EVT.getOrderID, EVT.getPrice, I think, and EVT.getNumber, and EVT.getProductID, the product ID that is ordered. So why do we have this error? Okay, let's see. Expected 0 argument, new order summary. So that first, let me save everything, save all. So if we go to the order summary, it says it expected 0 argument. But when I say add data here, that means it have all Axe constructor, it should be automatic. So I don't know why it's behaving this way. So permit me to, just give me a second. I'm going to simply put the constructor for order summary at this point. So let's see, what do we have here? Require type string provided UUID. For the order summary, ID is going to be UUID if I'm not mistaken. UUID. All right, perfect. So let's go back to the order projector here, and all the errors has gone away. So let me close all to no, okay. So the next thing I would like to do now is to write the query handler. Okay, so I'm going to say query handler for the order. Again, the query handler is going to be on. That's the query handlers always have the name on. So let's see. But there is something we need to bear in mind. When an order is created and we create a new order, we need to emit an event that says stock updated, to emit a stock updated event when an order is created, right? Let's see. So when an order is created, it raises an order created, this is order created event. We also need a stock updated event as well. So we have a new order and we are going to save it first. Repository.save summary. After saving it, we need to fire a new stock updated event. So I'm going to just put it as a comment, fire a new stock updated event. And to do that, you simply say stock updated event EVT, just create a new stock updated event is equal to new stock updated events. Just give me a second. New stock updated event, and we have EVT.getProductID and EVT.getStock. Stock updated event EVT is already defined where. Okay, so let me just use a different name, events. Use this one, events, and all right. So we have this error. Event is not initialized, it doesn't matter. So let me save everything, save all. So at this point, we have the stock updated event being fired once a new product is created or a new order is placed. Once that order is placed, we have to fire a stock updated event. Let me just make sure everything is okay. Yeah, so once we fire the stock updated event, we need to send it onto the event gateway. So any event you fire is going to be sent into the event gateway. So I'm going to say event gateway .publish events. All right. So send it into the event gateway. I don't know why this is just events dot get ID. Okay. So it's not been initialized. Stock updated events. Let's just make sure everything is okay. New stock updated events. Get. Is it event.get ID? Event.get ID. That is fine, I think. So let me just check something. So let's go to our events. Event should be somewhere here. So we have stock updated events, which is ID, and that is fine. So let's write our query handler. So we need a list of orders. So I'm going to say public. Yeah, so public lists of OrderSummary, public list of OrderSummary. That's a return type handle. The name of the function is a query handler, and it's going to have the name handle. It's going to handle GetOrdersQuery, QRY, and it's going to return repository.find all. Okay. All right, so this is fine. I'm going to save file, save all. So permit me to just troubleshoot a little bit where this problem is coming from. Stock updated events is equal to new stock updated events evt dot get product ID evt dot, give me 1 second. So when stock updated event, is it get product ID and get stock, or get, let's see. ID and get stock. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to close it. I think it should be fine. So this warning, we can actually ignore it. All right, so the next thing we want to create is a product projector. So I'm going to come here. So in this case, we have a query handler for sure that returns a list of products. We also need event handler for adding a new product. So let's write it right now. So it's going to be a component. So let me just increase the font a little bit. And we need the product repository, private final ProductSummary repository. That's fine. All right. Why add a constructor parameter? That is okay. All right. So we need event handler for adding a product. We need event handler for updating the stock, and we need another query handler for getting a list of product. So let's start with the first one, event handler. This one is for adding a product. So I'm going to say public void on event handlers has the name on products product added event evt. So when product is added, we are going to persist it, creating product summary is equal to new product summary. It's fine here. And evt.getID, evt.get price, evt.getStock, evt.getDescription. All right. And we are now going to persist this product. So I'm going to say repository.save is going to be summary. All right. Okay. Then we also need other, another event handler for on stock updated event. So I'm going to say public void on stock updated event EVT. And for stock updated event, we need two things. So we need to get let me see exactly, get stock updated event. We are actually going to update an existing summary. So we are not creating a new product summary. We are going to update an existing one. So first we are going to say product summary. We are going to find the particular stock, or increment or decrement the stock, and then save it using the repository. Product summary is equal to repository.find find by ID evt.get ID evt.get ID. Okay, now evt.get ID is going to give us the stock, but in case it doesn't find it, we're going to say else null. All right, in case it doesn't find it, so that it doesn't crash. And we are now going to update this summary and then save it back. So I'm going to say summary.set stock. We're going to now set the stock using the event summary.getStock minus the stock that is coming in. All right, so it's going to be minus evt.getStock. So this is what we are going to do, and then we are going to save it back because we've updated it. So I'm going to say repository.save summary. All right, so this is where we are. Good. Okay, so this is where we are at this point, and finally we need a query handler to return a list of products. So I'm going to say query handler public void on GetProductsQuery, I think QRY, and GetProductQuery. Let's call it QRY is okay, or you can call it query if you want. I'm gonna say return repository.find all. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I think it. Okay, so the return type is gonna be lists of product summary. All right. Okay, so at this point we've completed basically the difficult part of this. If this has been difficult to some extent, no problem. I'm going to kind of review this again, but leave me a comment to let me know what aspect of this course is difficult, so that maybe I can zoom into it and then maybe give more attention to it. All right, so I have this error here. I don't know why this error is. Stock updated events is equal to new stock updated events. I think this is okay. So let's now go to the REST controller. So I'm going to go to the REST controller. So we have the product. We need the product controller, and we also need the orders controller. So I'm going to create a new package. I'm going to create a new package. I'm going to call it controllers. Use lowercase controllers. Okay, so we need orders controller, and we need also product controller. So we have order controller and we also need product controller. So there's going to be product controller. All right, so we have two controllers right there. I'm not going to do any copy and paste. I'm going to type it out because I have to be explaining. So let's start with the product controller because that's what we have showing right here. So the product controller, we simply have a way to add a new product. We also want a way to retrieve list of products. So here we have our product controller is going to be a REST controller. I'm going to put the mapping at REST controller. That's fine. And if something is coming onto the controller, it have to go through the command gateway. If a command is coming into the controller, it has to go through to the command gateway. Because if you're adding a new product, is a command, so it's going to go through the command gateway. It's also coming into the something like a query is also coming in. It's going to go in through the query gateway. So we need the two gateways, command gateway and the query gateway. So I'm going to say private command gateway and private query gateway, and we then need the constructor parameters here. All right. So now we need the commands to add a new product. In this case, it's just a request coming in, but this request is coming in to add product. It's coming in with certain parameters like what product is to be added, and then we have to send it into the command gateway. So I'm going to say at post mapping to slash add products add product, and let's just go to public. Yeah, so I think I have it there. So let me just type it out. But public void handle. Charlie will stop typing it and then copy and paste. Request body. Product summary. Okay, so let me just copy and paste so that we don't waste all the time. So I'm going to copy and paste it, just paste everything. All right, so let me just import the classes. It's going to be this one, response types, imports, get mapping, imports, get product query, import, completable future, import as well. So basically what is happening here is if somebody goes to add a product, the product details comes as a request body, and based on that product detail we create a command and send to the command gateway. It's as simple as that. So this command gateway to send and wait sends that command to the command gateway. On the other hand, when we want to request list of products, it goes through the query gateway. So we have query gateway.query, new getProductsQuery, and get a response type is going to be multiple instances of the product summary. So the next thing we are going to now do is to do OrderScontroller. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it. And paste. All right, just sometimes if you know how to import everything at the same time, please do let me know, because sometimes I used to feel that there may be a way to just import everything at the same time. I don't know how. All right, so I think it's time for us to test our application. Import, yeah, fine. Okay, so I have import here. All right, so the next thing we want to do now, I think everything should be fine. This let me just quickly check and make sure, because let me see, file, save all. It says events, stop updated events. Have not been initialized. That doesn't make any sense. Excuse me. Let's go to events here. Stock updated events. We have data class stock updated events val. Okay, I think this is fine. Okay, let's just configure the H2 database and then we should be good to go. So the H2 database, I'm going to simply copy the configuration and go to resources, application properties, and paste it right. And paste it right there. So I call it ecom-db, like e-commerce application or e-commerce application database. And then I'll need, it's going to be running on port 8080. That's fine. I think I'm missing something. Yeah, so we need some initial data. So I'm going to create a new file here called data.sql. So I'm going to create a new file, data.sql. So this is going to be some initial queries that is going to populate the database. So I'm going to, I already wrote the query, so it's going to populate the product summary table. So I'm going to say file, save all, and let's fire this application up just to see if we have any luck. So let me pause at this point. Let's fix this error in the nice part, and then we are going to continue working. So let's fix it in the next part and then continue. Meanwhile, I would like to thank you for viewing, and please let me know if you have any challenges and subscribe to my channel if you've not subscribed. So if you can remember from the previous part, we had an error when we tried to test run this application. So now we are going to try to solve this error. So you can see it tells us Java variable might have not been initialized. So that is basically telling you that the variable you are using might not be the right variable. So we are going to check the name of the variable and just make sure everything is okay. So let's see. Let me just shift this a little bit to this way. So you can see that the event variable is the problem. Now, when we are firing an update stock event, we need the ID of the product to be updated, and also the number of items, the number of items we want to add. So that's ID and stock. But this data is going to be coming from events, from the order created event. So not from this new event I'm creating right now, but it should be coming from the order created event that is passed in as parameter to this event handler function. And take note that the stock updated event being fired is fired as part of the event handler when an order is created. Okay, so I'm going to change it to EVT, and I'm going to also change this to EVT as well. So so let's see, I think this should be it. So this EVT we want to use. So I'm going to, is it giving us error? Add val property to order created event. So let's see. Okay. Order created event. So just give me 1 second. So evt.getProductID, and that is getProductID, because if you look at the event here, it should be order created event. Let's see, it has product ID, not just the ID. Okay, and the next one is evt.get number of items we want to add, because if you look at the order created event, we have order created event, we have number and a product ID. Okay, so that is it. So the next thing we want to do now is to test run again, because that was why we came here. So I'm going to save all and I'm going to rerun this application and let's see what we have. So if it works, we now know that the API is done. Of course, the API is simply does not give us a UI. So basically an API where we have a list of items as JSON. So right now it starts on port 8080. So we are going to browse on port 8080, but I'm going to show you something first before I browse on port 8080. If you look at this place, we should be able to, let's reload. So we have the application running right here in Axon Framework. Now about the H2 database we configured, you can actually look at the H2 console to see basically like an interface for managing your H2 database, but it's quite trivial, so you might not be using it. But we just want to show, I just want to show you to make sure you understand where to check that H2 is working. So go to H2-console and you'll be able to see the H2 console. So if I increase the size a little bit, and take note that we are using this a database name that you define in your data source. So in this case, we have ecomdb. So I'm going to simply come here and change it to ecomdb and connect. So now you can see that we have a number of things right here. So you can see we have token entry, saga entry, product summary, order summary. So the two things you want to take note of is product summary and order summary. So when I click on the product summary and click on run, you can see we have a number of items in the product. So that's about H2 console. You can always check to make sure that your database is okay. So what we want to do now, so this is the previous one. So let's just run what we have is 8080/products, and let's see. So we have the products is coming right here. So you can, so you can see the list of products right here. So far the get list of products is working. So if I go to orders, now we have an empty list. Okay. Now what I would like to do at this point is let's try to add a new product. So basically we are trying to test the product added event. So if I go to my controllers, my product controller, and that should be in the controllers package. If I go to product controller, we have an option to add a product, you can see right here. But to make a post request to add a new product, we can't do that from the browser. We can do that using either advanced REST client or maybe Postman client. I think that's the name. Let's see. So basically, to make a post request, I have an application called Advanced REST Client. Okay, no, I don't have this, but you can actually get it from Google. You can actually get it, and let me just show you. Advanced REST Client. So if you have it installed, it's a Google Chrome extension, so you can just add it to Chrome and say add app. So once you have it, you'll be able to make a post request. So let's just open it. So once you open it, you'll be able to make a post request, not just get. So I'm going to skip. Let me also show you that there is also another one. We have this Postman is also another one, but I think both of them are just good. So if I go to port 8080, this time we are trying to make a post request. Permit me to do a get request first to HTTP. I can just copy the URL from where we have it, and we are trying to do products. We're trying to add a new product. So let me go to product. Let me just copy, and if you just paste the URL there, okay, and make a simple get request, and you have all these items. Now we want to be able to add a new product. So the easiest way to do that is simply copy one of them and then we modify it. So this time we want to make a post request. So I'm going to go to post, and is going to be add product if I'm not mistaken. So let's just make sure. Let me just shift this a little bit. So it's going to be add product. Okay, so let's go back here. And now we are doing post. So we need to specify the body of the request. So I'm going to paste. Let's add like a product ID of 5. And let's make the price to be 600. No, I mean the price. The price can be something else. Let's say just mix things up a bit, and let's call this. Let's just say computer mouse. Yeah. So there is a general purpose store that sells everything. All right, so let's make this post request and hope that it's going to add a new product to the stock. So I'm going to click on send, and it says unsupported media type. Okay, so if I go back to, permit me to just close this finder. If I go back to our console, let's try to troubleshoot this problem. So it says unsupported media type. So to troubleshoot, you can simply go to, we can come here. We have request body, ProductSummary. So we have post or mapping. So it says unsupported media type. Okay, so now let's set the body content type to application JSON here in post in advanced REST client. So I'm going to set it to application JSON, and I'm going to remake this request again. So I'm going to send. Now you can see that it worked. It says 200. Okay. So I'm going to say computer keyboard. Let's just make sure. I'm going to this time I'm going to set ID to be 6, and I'm going to resend, and it worked 200. Okay. So if we now go back to check, let's just make sure it is inserted by going to maybe we can just refresh this, and we have it added right here, as you can see. But maybe it's gonna be clearer when we use H2 console. So if I go to H2 console and go to connect and go to product summary and go to run, and you can see that we have a number of items added. So our system is working so far. But now we want to now also be able to place an order, and when we place an order, we should be able to have the stock deprecated, all right, or reduced. So let's check. If we go back to the order controller, this is the order controller, and the order controller should be this one, and we have create order. You can see we need the order ID, the price, the number, and the product ID, right? So let's try to do that also using Advanced REST Client. After we do it and it succeeds, basically we are done with CQRS, and I try to show you around how to now build a UI. We're going to be using Thymeleaf, and later we are going to be using Angular 10 to build our UI. So we have this order ID to be 6, so I'm going to place an order for a computer keyboard, which has an order ID of 6 and a price of 80.2. So if I go to here, I can come and say create order, and we need an order ID, the price, the number of items to be ordered, and the product ID. So the order ID should be a UUID, I think, but let's see. So we have, so let's see, let me just make sure. I think I'm going to just reduce the font a little bit. So if I go to the order summary, if I go to, it should be the read model, order summary, we have UUID for the order ID, we need the price, and we need the number of items, and we also need the product ID. Okay. All right, so let's do this. We have order ID, the ID, we have the price, we have the number, and we have the product ID. So we have the ID, we have the price, and we have the number. And we also need the product ID. So let's say we are doing product ID of 6. Product ID of 6. And we are ordering, let's say, 10 items. And the price can just be the same. The order ID is a UUID, so maybe we may just not pass it in, or we may pass it in. Either way is okay. So let's leave it at 1 at this point. So I'm going to click on send, and I know that it's going to be bad request. So if we go to try to troubleshoot, if I go down here, it says input stream OrderSummary ID 1. Okay. So let's go to the order controller to try to fix this problem. So we have OrderSummary. We have create order, new order, and we have OrderSummary. The OrderSummary, let's just check. If I go to OrderSummary, so the ID should be UUID, that is fine. So now I'm going to take out this at this point, and I'm going to make the request. So it says no. And the error is, let's check what the error message is. There is no parameter order ID. So the parameter should be order ID. So let's just get back here. All right, so let me explain what the problem is. We actually don't need to give the order ID. The order ID is a UUID, and so we don't need to specify it in the JSON. So that what I did now is to change the, instead of taking order ID from the incoming request body, I simply use a random UUID. So that's what I did here. In the create order function, or in the create order controller method, simply use a random UUID. And in your request, simply remove the order ID. So don't pass in another ID. So we've created a new order for product ID of 6, which I think is computer keyboard. So if we go back to H2 database, let's just go back to H2 database, because that kind of is clearer. So if I go to run, you can see, let's just connect again. And I go to OrderSummary, run. We have one order for a product ID of 6, which is computer keyboard, and we are placing 10 items. So if we go back to the product summary, let's check that the order has been deprecated by 10. So if I go to the product summary and run, you can see now we have 590. Let me just increase it. We have 590 items left. Okay, so everything is working as per CQRS our architecture. So I'd like you to take some time to get your head around it and make sure you understand all the aspects. The reminder is you need to create the way this I have it here, all these packages have to be created in this way. The next thing I would like to now talk about is the UI. All right, so there are different ways to create a UI. Now, if you are building an application, it's better to follow the microservices architecture pattern. That means that the UI should be a different application. All right. So normally I could use AngularJS to just set up a UI that's going to pull data from this API I just built, because I've completed building this API, make no mistake about it. As an assignment, try to add a command to maybe delete an order, or maybe to modify an order, or to increase the number of items, and a number of things you can do. But for now, this is a basic way. You can simply just enhance it by adding more functionalities to it. So let's go back to our step-by-step in my website. So at this point, I'm going to go to the last item, which is, sorry, let me just take out this. So the last item is going to be build the UI. I would like to stay within within Spring Boot, within the same application. I don't want to go to another application. So at this point, I will add the jQuery and Bootstrap dependencies to this application, because we are going to be using Bootstrap and jQuery. So the first thing I would like to do, I'm going to copy these dependencies and add it to the pom.xml. That's going to give me access to jQuery and Bootstrap. So I'm going to copy the two dependencies for jQuery and Bootstrap and place it in the pom.xml. So once I put in these dependencies, it will give me access to the Bootstrap, CSS, JS, and all these other scripts that help to create a nice UI. So let me add it here. So I added jQuery 4.3.1, that's Bootstrap, jQuery 3.4.1. So at this point, the next, because this is the direction we are going, right? So the next instruction says create the HTML page. So I'm going to create the HTML page, has to be created in the templates folder. HTML pages have to be created in the templates folder. So there is a template folder, and I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to call it, choose a HTML file, I'm going to call it index. All right. So we have our index page right now. However, I will not put the code for this page here. So the code for this page is not in my website. So I'm going to go get the code from, I should get the code from the Bootstrap website. So I'm going to go to Bootstrap. You can go from anywhere and simply go to examples and go down to, can just use a basic one, theme starter template. So what I normally do is to right click and go to source and copy the source. So normally you are going to copy everything between the body and the /body tag, except all these scripts here. So I'm going to copy from here all the way to this place. So basically it's going to give me the navigation bar and just the container to write things. So I'm going to go to my HTML page and just paste it right there in the HTML page. All right. So how about just giving it a caption? Here say CQRS tutorial. All right. So there is a nav bar. I'm going to just kind of save it, and this is the body. One thing I normally do is to take out this fixed stop. For some reason, you have to take it out, or you might leave it, it's still okay. All right, so now we have our HTML page. How do we make sure the page is working? Because how do we go to the home page? Because if you run this application, for instance, I go to 8080 and go to /index. Sorry. I don't have this HTML page. If I even go to .html, I don't have it as well. Okay, so the instruction is also right here. If I can remember, okay, the instruction is, let me see. Okay, so because this is not explained in my website, I would like to serve this page. All right, so that when the application runs, you can actually get across to this page. So to serve this page, I need a controller to be able to, a different controller, this time not a REST controller, but a controller that will work with the UI. So this controller is going to is going to accept a GET request and return a HTML page. So I'm going to go into my controllers file and create a new controller, Java class. I'm going to call it home controller. And once you do that, annotate the file with @controller annotation. So once you annotate it with that controller annotation, it will be able to serve HTML pages and not just JSON formatted data. So I'm going to say get mapping to /index. /index, I'm going to say public, this time string, because if you are going to be returning a HTML page, you're going to return it as a string if you are using Thymeleaf for template management. So let this function be home. All right, so what we want to return is simply the page. So you simply say return index. So even if you don't use the .html extension, Thymeleaf is going to understand what you want to do, and it's going to interpret it to be the index.html page. So at this point, when we run this application and go to the index page, we should be able to see the index.html page. So at this point, I'm going to save everything and restart this application, stop and rerun. And this time we should have a HTML page. Once we have the HTML page, we now talk about how to display the tables in the page. So let's go back here. So at this point, if I go to /index, you have this page, basic page. Now we've not added the Bootstrap, the link to the the URL and script links to the Bootstrap and jQuery file to help us give it the format we need. That's what we are going to be doing next. So if I go back to my index page, let's try to add a bit of format to this index page right here. So in this head section, we want to add the scripts. And again, in my website, you have the scripts outlined here. Permit me to, I don't know why sometimes my system kind of behaves funny. Okay. So we need to add these scripts right here. So we have the first one, link href is equal to webjazz. It's going to be /webjazz/ if I'm not mistaken, bootstrap. I expected it to give me IntelliSense, but it's not giving me IntelliSense. 4.3.1 /css/bootstrap. Instead of typing out this thing like this, I'm just going to copy everything and paste it. So I'm going to just copy everything. I'm going to copy everything, and I'm going to simply paste it right there. All right. So at this point, I have everything pasted. You can also see there's a file called main.js we are going to be talking about later. We are going to be using it to display pop-up and to handle submission of items to the API. So at this point, I would like to save everything and let's rerun. So let me stop. And I'm going to save everything, and I'm going to rerun this application. We want to now see that the page is going to be formatted using the Bootstrap and jQuery we've copied across. Sometimes, okay. So if I now go back here and I simply hit on the refresh, it doesn't work. Why? So it doesn't work. So maybe I need to reload the, I need to import my dependencies or something like that. So I'm going to rerun, stop and rerun, and I think it should work by now. All right, so let's refresh. And you can see that we have our page, at least our home page is working perfectly well. So the next thing I'd like us to do, I'd like us to display the table, the product table. So let me display the product table here. So let me, instead of using same Bootstrap starter template, let's just say list of products. All right, so how do we do this? We'll need a table, all right, and we need head, and we also need the body, all right, fine. So the product, I think it should have the product, the number, the product. Let me just make sure. The product, the price, the stock, and the description. So I'm going to add a new row, tr. I'm going to have td, have product, stock, price, and description. Or we can just say product, price, and stock. Product, td, price, td, we have stock. This should be td and not tdd. And we also need td. These are actions to be performed, like place an order for this product. Okay, so we have this. I'm not sure when I save it's going to refresh the page. Let me save and I refresh. It doesn't work. Okay. So the next thing I would like to do, we have the header has been set up. We now need to set up the body. So we need a row tr. All right. So we need td. Now this row is going to repeat. So you know there's a list of products we want to display. So to use Thymeleaf, you have to use the syntax to add a repeater for the row. So for this row, I'm going to say th for each equals for each product in products. For each product in so let me just get the syntax right. Products. Now, when this page loads, it's going to receive a list of products coming from the API. So we have to iterate this list of products and display all the products one by one. So there is a syntax, ch, each product in products. So there is a syntax. I don't know how else to read it, but that is the syntax. So for each of the products, I'm going to display th text equals th text is equal to, I don't know, this IntelliSense can be a nuisance sometimes. So th text is equal to specify product dot description, and I'm going to just repeat into 3 places. I'm going to copy and paste into 3 places. All right. So I have product as the description, I have the price, and we have the stock. All right. If I'm not mistaken, I think this should be fine. Okay. So now the question is, how do we send the list of products across the HTML page? That's the next thing we are going to do. Let's check my website, because some things are in my website, but some are not there. All right. So I'll actually have loved to take this sequentially, but for some reason, let me kind of skip. I want you to know how to display the list of products on the page. So that is where we have here, when we are displaying the index page, we also want to send a list of products across to the index page. So let's see. So if we go back to this home controller, so we are saying that on this index page, we want to also send products across to it. So to do that, we use the model. The model is like a vehicle that sends some data from the controller on to the UI. So we're going to add the model as a parameter here, and of course you have to import, and we have to okay, now this is very, very important. The data we want to send is coming from an API, from a URL. A microservices standard, this URL can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the same application. So basically, the URL is this URL. So let's just define the URL where the data is coming from. String, string URL. Let's call it product URL equals let's just get it right. HTTP localhost port 8080/product. So this is where the product list is coming from. So when it comes, you're going to send it across to the home page to display. To do that, we have to use RestTemplate. RestTemplate is used for making requests, HTTP requests using Spring Framework. So I'm going to say, so this is all the code you need, but I would like to write it out so that I'll be explaining as I write. So one who gets these items coming from the URL, they are lists of products. But now the index page or this service does not know whether they are products or not, because products is defined in the API. It's not defined in the UI, so we don't know if it's products or not. But the base object in the base class in Java is objects. So we are getting them now as a list of objects. So I'm going to say object as an array of objects. Object is equal to RestTemplate. So what is RestTemplate? RestTemplate is used for making HTTP requests in Spring Framework. So we need to define a RestTemplate bean, right? So we'll be able to use it. For now, we don't have it. So I'm going to go to I can create the bean anywhere, but I'd like to create this bean in so I like to create my beans here. So I'm going to create a bean. I'm going to say public RestTemplate get RestTemplate get rest. So I'm going to say just return new RestTemplate. All right, so this bean is going to be available for us anytime. So I'm going to come back here and say, okay, so I need to auto-wire it into this place. So let's see. It's auto-wired private RestTemplate. All right, so we can use it now to make requests, okay? So I'm going to say object is equal to RestTemplate.getForObject and give a parameter of the URL, product URL, and we want to have a list of objects. So it's going to be array of objects. Let me just say dot class. Okay. So we have an array of objects returned. So let me kind of reduce this. Now this array of objects, we will now want to convert it to a list of products. So I'm going to say list of objects. So one thing I've not tried is to pass these objects exactly as it is to the HTML page. I normally like to convert to a list of items. So list of products is equal to arrays dot as list and specify the object. Okay. So now we have a list of products. Equal to. So import. All right. So how do we now pass it onto the HTML page, to the index page? You simply say model dot add attribute and specify the first parameter to be the name of the attribute you want to use, the name of the attribute, and the second parameter should be the items, the list of items you want to pass. So it's going to be product. All right. So the first parameter is the name of the attribute, and the second parameter is the actual attribute you want to pass. So at this point in the index page, this list of product will be available to the index page. Let's just make sure, let's just try and make sure it works. So I'm going to save all. I'm going to rerun this application, stop and rerun. One problem one challenge I normally have is when it comes to UI. I'm not a fan of UI because sometimes some things you do working with API backend or working server side, when it comes to UI, it takes a whole lot of time to do. So now we have this. So if I go back here and I refresh, and it tells us error. So local hotspot 8080 is not a valid URI. Okay. So http:// okay. So I'm going to save everything and restart again. So I'm going to save all and restart, stop and rerun. Again, I'd like to encourage you, try to follow carefully, because sometimes you become a better programmer by continually practicing, overcoming the challenges you might have. So at this point, if I refresh this page, you can see that we have a list of products displayed here. I'm going to show you how to make it better, to look a little better, like I think I have a table in my website to look something like this. So I'm going to show you in a minute. For now, let's try to continue. So now we want to add a button that will say order now. That's going to place an order across. All right. So let's go back to the home page, and we need one more column here. We are going to call this so A, and we need a button here. So I'm going to say ID is equal to order button. So there is going to be the button that the user is going to click and place an order across to the order controller, create order endpoint. All right, so permit me to just do this. All right, so we have the endpoint we want to place this order is this endpoint href is equal to. Now to specify the URL in Thymeleaf, because managing templates or UI elements, now we are using Thymeleaf. The syntax is at. Remember we used $sign before now, but now if you want to display a text item, is going to be $sign like we use here. But for URL, you need to use at. So let me shift this backwards so that we can have some room. And let me just see if I can make some room here. Okay, good. So at, and then you specify in curly braces the URL. So we have new order, and okay, so I'm going to just type it out exactly the way it is. New order / specify in brackets the ID of the product, and the ID is coming from let's see, product.id, which is this product, the ID of this product, which actually we don't display here. We could have, but I actually choose not to. ID is equal to, use another $sign and opening curly braces product.id. Let me just make sure I'm not forgetting something, because it's gonna be messed up if you forget anything. So price is equal to use a $sign and then product.price. Okay, hopefully everything should be okay. And yeah, so let me just come here and say order one now, because we've made it simple so that when you are placing an order, you simply order only one single item. But if you want, you can just repeat. And the class is equal to btn, btn warning. So btn, we'll say, okay, fine. This table, we are going to format it to look nice. So I'm going to say it's going to class is equal to table. It's going to be table bordered. It's going to be table striped or whatever. Okay. So at this point, we'll have an order button displayed for every product. Maybe we can just test. So I'm going to save file, save all. I'm going to rerun. Now, to avoid having to stop and rerun every time, I think you can use the Spring Boot DevTools. I'm not a fan of that, so I don't use it most of the time. So I normally just rerun the application. So I'm going to refresh this page, and now you can see what we have here is fine. But when I click on order now, nothing actually happens, and that's what we are going to be fixing now. So let's go back to the web page and then follow the instruction. So let's scroll down. We have these, we have good. So this is where we are. Now, what we want to do is we want to display a modal. When somebody clicks on order now, we want a modal to display. There are a number of ways to do that, but the way we can do it for this application is to use a link to ensure that when a user clicks on the order now button, it will display a modal pop-up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the to the Bootstrap website and look for modal. So this is modal, and I think we can use this one. So if I copy this one, copy the modal, there is a script for the modal, and I'm going to put it right in my home page, but put it just before the last body tag. So I'm going to just paste it right there, and I'm going to change the name to order modal without having to do other things. I'm going to simply follow the instructions. So there is instruction you have to follow. When you copy the Bootstrap modal code to your application, add an ID of order modal to the modal, add an ID of order ref to the primary button. So I've changed it ID. Oh, sorry, this is not, I think I've screwed up something. So this class remains the same. So it's just going to add an ID of order modal. So we'll be able to use it as modal. So let's give it an ID. And for the primary button that will actually do the work, I'm going to add an ID of order ref. And I'm going to add a title right here that says confirm order. And in the body, I'm going to just ask a question. Are you sure you want to place this order? Are you sure you want to place this order? And the person is going to have option to say yes, place order, or he can choose no. All right. Okay, so this is fine. However, this modal pop-up for now is not going to show when we click on the order now button. We are going to display this modal pop-up using a we are going to display this modal pop-up using a JavaScript. Before I do that JavaScript, let me just show you how you can display this modal pop-up even without JavaScript. So if I go to the Bootstrap modal and let me see. So basically, there is a button that normally launches it. So once you add to the button, like you have this, the button that launches the modal, you add it, the data toggle and the data target is going to launch the modal. So if I copy these two, the data target and the data toggle to this button right here. So if I just say data target equals the name of the model, so in this case it's gonna be hash, because hash is selected for the ID, not the name. Order model and data target, and then we have data toggle is equal to model. So now I hope this model is going to display when we click on the button. Permit me to change this to button. Okay, we are going to change back. So I just want to show you how the model works. So I'm going to save everything, save all, and relaunch this application. So at this point, we hope that the model is going to display. All right. So if I come here and just refresh this page and I click on other one now, you can see that we have a model displayed. So take note of that. But now we are going to adjust this code to display this model using JavaScript instead of using the data target and the data toggle. The reason is when we are displaying the model using JavaScript, we also want to fetch the ID of the product to be ordered and also the price, because we are going to be sending these things in a URL to the endpoint for create order. So I'm going to remove the data target and toggle from here, and I'm going to change this back to an anchor tag. I'm going to just do a little bit of cleanup. All right, so this is where we are. So let's go to the step-by-step and continue. Now, we need a JavaScript that's going to run. I don't like these things displaying here. It's always like an interruption. Okay. So we need a JavaScript that's going to run when a user clicks on the Order Now button, right? So we have the Order Now button is this one. And that JavaScript file, I call it main.js, and it's going to be available in the static folder. Now, if you look at this place, we have src is equal to static main.js. It's not inside the JS file, so I'm going to just take out this. So basically what happens is we have these two srcs. Thymeleaf is going to use this one, but in case for any reason it doesn't work, it's going to also use this one. So we have two, they are kind of redundant. So if I go to my static folder, I'm going to create a new JavaScript file. So there's JavaScript file, yeah, great. I'm going to call it main, and this is our main.js. I'm going to actually write this JavaScript function while I explain it. So the first thing you want to do is to select the document. So document.ready document ensures that this script is only going to run when this page completes completely loaded. Document.ready I have the function we are going to run, and now this is fine. So it's going to run when the page loads. And now we also want to run a code when a user clicks on something. When a user clicks on the order button, we want a function to run and display the pop-up. So permit me to close up a few things. Okay. All right. So this is where we are. So I'm going to select the table. I'm going to select the button when it's clicked. We are going to do something. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use another selector, dot table. Okay, dot table. And now inside the table, remember the button is inside the table. Let me just make sure I'm not, so I'm going to put in single quotes dot table. It's going to now be hash dot table hash order model. That's the name, order model. Let me just make sure. So if I go back to my index, the name of the model is no. We want order button is what we are going to select. So when order button is clicked, so let's see. Order button, so it's going to be this. All right. So when this is clicked, what happens? Dot on click. Okay, so dot on click, we are going to run a function, and that function is going to capture button clicked event, and that is fine. So I'm going to come here and say, now when you click on a button that links to a URL, we don't want to go to that URL. The default behavior is that when you click on a button that actually links to a URL, it's going to go to this URL, but we want to prevent that from happening by you. To prevent that from happening, we're just going to say event that prevent default. So it's not going to go to the URL, but we want it to display a modal pop-up. So now when that button is clicked, we want to set the URL. We want to get the URL of the button of the current link of this button, because the link of this button is dynamic. It's based on the particular row that was clicked, so it's dynamic. So when you click on it, you want to get the URL for that particular row, or that corresponds to that particular row, which has the ID and the price that was selected. I'm going to say var href is equal to the href attribute. So I'm going to select this, which is the current button being clicked. I'm going to say that attributes, and it's going to be href attributes. All right, so this is fine. And we will now assign these attributes to the button in the modal, because ultimately the button in the modal will make the request, not the button on the table. We only make this request when we click on yes and confirm. So that button, when we click on yes confirm, is what makes the request, not this one. So this one is going to simply display the modal, get the URL, assign it to the other button that's actually going to make the request. So I'm going to say, assign this button, the URL. I'm going to say, I'm going to use the other selector, order model. Yes, the button in the order ref, which is the button in the model. Say the attributes href, and we've assigned. Okay, so it's there now, waiting for the user to click on order now, on yes confirm. And now I'm going to now say, basically I'm going to display the model. So I'm going to select the model, order model dot model. I think I'm getting it right. Great. So as you can see right now, we have everything set up. So now it's time to test it. But there's something I'd like you to know. But for now, let's just make sure that the model displays. So I'm going to save everything and then let's test it. So I'm going to save all, and then I'm going to restart this application. So if I go back here and refresh this page, everything works. Click, it shows perfectly well. Okay. Yeah, so, okay, great. All right, so let's go and follow the instruction. Now, when this order is placed, okay, we're actually making a request to, let me just make sure what I'm saying. Okay, so we have this. When a user interacts with the form, the request is not sent to the REST controller we built in part 2. Rather, the request goes to a controller, not the REST controller. This controller then uses RestTemplate to make REST calls to the REST controller. So the front-end form we are working with does not make direct calls to the REST controller. We are making a call to the REST controller using RestTemplate, not the form, not the front end. So that's like 2 steps. So when we go from the front end, let me just show you. Go from this front end is going to hit a controller, a controller, not a REST controller. And then that controller is going to use RestTemplate to make a request to the REST controller. So this is what we are saying. If I go back to my home controller, is the home controller, I think. Yeah, so this home controller you see right here is making a request across to the REST controller. So controller here is making a request to the REST controller because we are assuming that this UI application we are building is different from the REST API. The REST API is in a different place. There is a UI application that is different. But later on, I'm going to use AngularJS to make to create a UI that makes calls directly from the UI on to the REST API. But for now, we are using this UI to make a call or to send a request to the controller, to the normal local home controller. And that home controller is now going to make a REST API across to the API. I hope you understand it. Maybe you can pause the video, take some time out to get your head around it, and it's going to be just fine. And I also explained it to you here in my website. All right, so we have the home controller. So I'm going to kind of remove all these unnecessary spaces here. So we have the home controller that returns the index page. When it returns the index page, it also signs across a list of products to the index page. We also need, let's also kind of send a list of orders across. So it's the same way we send a list of products, we can send a list of orders. So permit me to increase the font a little bit. And I'm going to I'm going to just duplicate almost everything. Let me just copy everything here, duplicate it. Yeah, so in this case now we are doing for order URL, and this is going to be orders, and this is now maybe I'm just going to do this inline. So instead of doing this here, I can just copy it and give me 1 second. Let me just get this right. Yeah, I can just use it here. Command V. Just give me 1 second. So we have list of objects is equal to, yeah, so let's just paste it and we can take out this. So list of orders is equal to array data list, this REST template, what was returned by the REST template list of objects. So we don't have to just create another object. And this time we are saying orders here, and it's gonna be orders. Yeah. So now we are passing both the list of orders and the list of products across to the HTML page. Remember, we've not displayed the list of orders in the table in the HTML page. We're going to do that in a minute. Now we want to write the code to make post requests using REST template. REST template is really very important. You need to know about it. So when you make a post request using RestTemplate, it's a bit different than when you make a GET request. It's a bit more complex, but we in production we might not be using this. We just use maybe some other UI library, Angular, React, and Laravel for PHP and so on. But for now, let's do it the hard way. All right. So when we are making a post request, we need to use, because a post request is going to let me just say request mapping value is equal to, that's the URL new order. So this new order link URL is where the user, the request coming from the UI is gonna hit this new order URL in the home controller, not the REST controller. And from here, the REST template is gonna take over and now make a post request across to the API. All right, so we have method is equal to posts, request method dot post, and second, and request method dot get. I think the idea is that when you make a post request, you also get a response, like a HTTP code response, like 200 OK or something. So there must be some response, right? I really like to see everything, but don't know why this has behaved this way. Okay, I'm going to shift this upwards. Okay, so this is fine. Yeah, create order. So this is different. Okay, so this is where we are, and we have public. Now, when we make a post request, we also want to get, like, remember when you make a GET request, we are saying we are going to return the index page, because we are going to send the model, we are going to send the list of products to the index page. And we are making a post request, we also want to return the same page, right? We don't want to go to anywhere. We simply want to refresh the page and return the same page. So it's also going to return a string, the same page, right? The same index page. You simply post and it simply updates the page, and you see the list of items has been updated. It's going to be public string. I'm going to call it create order. Now the two items coming from the UI is the ID of the product as well as the price. So I'm going to say string ID and string price. Okay, for now, just permit me to use string ID and price. I'm going to explain later on. Now we have the URL where we want to now use RestTemplate to make a request to an API, and that API is create order API. Remember we use it here. So this API, this URL is where we want to make the request for creating a new order. We're going to make that request using RestTemplate. So I'm going to say string URL is equal to this. Okay, right? So this is fine. We want to make a post request. Now making post requests is a bit verbose, but we have to just get through it. When you want to make a post request, you need to specify headers. So we need HTTP headers. Headers is equal to new HTTP headers. That's fine. So in this header, we now want to specify the content type we want to use. So headers dot, I'm going to say it's actually headers, not header. Headers dot set content type. Oh, give me 1 second. HTTP headers is equal to new HTTP headers. As private access to okay, so I have java.net.http headers. I think it's not java.net.http headers. So I'm going to come here and take these out. So give me 1 second, let me just make sure everything is fine. Okay, so it's not java.net.http headers, it should be the first ones, or the Spring Framework.http, because this is RestTemplate we are talking about. Set content type should be media type application form URL encoded, because this is coming from a form, a HTML form. And now we want to get the parameters, the list of items that are going to be sent across as URL parameters, and we are going to get them as a multi-value map of strings, string. So I'm going to say multi-value map of string and string. Map is equal to new of string and string. All right, so this is what we have, and this is just so fine. Yeah, so in this map now, we want to add the items we want to send across. Okay, so yeah, so I'm going to say map.add the price. It's gonna be the price coming, and map.add. We also need ID, and then the product ID. Product ID is going to be ID, if I'm not mistaken. So this is going to be the product ID coming. And map.add, we also need the number of items being ordered. So we say let's limit it to just one for now. So it's going to be 1. Because we are using multi-value map of strings, string and string. So that's why we are making everything to be string. Can also say multi-value map string and object. It's going to make it a bit complicated, so that we can use double, we can use string and integer, but I think it's good to make life easy for everyone. So we now want to add this item to the headers, right? So no, not we add this item to the header, but we want to now let me see, create a request that we are going to use. So that's HTTP entity multi-value map of string and string. So it's going to be a request is equal to new HTTP entity multi-value map of string and string takes map and the headers as well. Okay, and it's going to be string and string. All right. What happened here? Wait, let me just make sure. Okay, everything should be fine. So why do we have? Because there was some error somewhere. I wasn't seeing it, so I'm going to just go next. So now it's time to make the post request. So to make a request using post, I'm going to say RestTemplate.postForEntity, specify the URL, specify the request, and specify the response type you want. So response type like OK or like created and stuff like that. And then I'm going to return the same page. To return the same page, I'm going to return redirects to the same page index. All right. It's not an easy one, but this is the hard way. I'm going to be talking about the easy way in a different video. All right, so now when you test this application, you are going to have some errors. If you encounter errors, there is this troubleshooting you need to do. So in the post mapping for the order controller here, so now the request coming to this create order is coming not as a request body, but as a set of parameters. So we are going to change this instead of request body to request params. To request param, it's not OrderSummary this time, but multi-value map. All right. And these items now will have to be converted to string in some way. So this is the code to convert them to string. So let me just copy and paste so that we don't waste any time. So I'm going to copy and paste. Let's say Command V. Perfect. All right. So we have everything almost set, except that we have not displayed the orders table on the HTML page. So if I go back to the HTML page, to the index page, and I can just copy this table and just duplicate this very table that permit me to also copy the header. And I'm going to copy. I'm going to put a little HR here, put a little BR here, and then I'm pasting Command V. And for the orders table, we don't need this action button here. So I'm just going to take it out. I'm going to take it out as well. So it's going to be a list of orders here. So it's going to be for order in orders. So it's going to be for order in orders. We will have order dots. We have order dots. All right. So now we need to be clear on what we want to do. So if we go back to OrderSummary, so let's go to the OrderSummary. Let's see what fields we need to display. So we have the order ID, we have the price, we have the number. So let's say we need things ordered, we need the product that is ordered, right? And so that's what I would like to display first. So we have order.summary, right? Order.summary, because summary now is the product that is ordered. Because if you look at the other summary, you see that this summary here is the product that is ordered, and we have to capture the description of that. So I'm going to say order.summary.description. And let's check again. And we need the number of items ordered and the price. The number of items ordered and the price. I think we'll need order.number. If I'm not mistaken, let me just check. That number and price, that is great. I'm not sure we will need the ID. That is not necessary to display. I think we should be fine. So we have product, we have price, we have number, and these actions can now go. All right. All right. So we can also display the order ID if we want. So if I go to OrderSummary, I have the ID. So let's just display it just to have a feel. So I'm going to say TD th text equals have a $sign, open up the first one. I'm mixing up things. Order.id, and I'm going to just close up this, and this is fine. Yeah. Okay, so put this again here, TD ID. Okay. So hopefully everything is okay. I hope everything should be fine by now. So let's now run this application and let's see if everything works well, and then we should be able to conclude this course. So let me first go to File. I'm going to save all and I'm going to restart, stop and rerun. Let's see. Yeah, so the first success we have is that everything started successfully, port 8080, and let's go. Now come here now, and I'm going to refresh. Okay, it tells me there's error somewhere, so let's go fix it. So let's see where the error is coming from. Order.summary.description is not right. Order.summary.description. Let's see. All right, so I now figure out where this problem is coming from. So if you look at our list here, if you look at the home controller, you see that when we make a call to the orders, I forgot to change this to order URL. So I'm going to just change it. So it was remaining product URL. So I forgot. So that's where the problem is coming from. So let me just go here. I was just commenting some things just to troubleshoot. All right, so let me save everything, and now let's test it and just make sure. So I'm going to stop and rerun, and hopefully at this time it should work. All right, so I'm going to refresh this page. I'm going to just hit enter at this point. Now you can see that the page displays so well, but let's just hope it works. Let's place an order. And let's see that the order was placed. So I'm going to place order for women's shoes. Order 1 now. Yes. And nothing happens. So that's a problem. So place order for women's shoe. Nothing happens. So let's troubleshoot this. I'm going to right click, inspect, console. Place. Okay. So one thing you can see that this works. So our JavaScript worked, but it's not able to send the request. So let's come back here. So this worked. So everything here actually worked. Now let's now see. Let's go to the index page and go to this model. Now the order ref, the button for place, they're actually making the URL has to be an anchor tag, because you can't use button to make a URL request. So I'm going to change it to an anchor tag. And I think I've just been a bit naughty, because if you go to my website, I think you can see that because I added this list of possible errors. Yeah, I had it as list of possible errors. I don't know why it's not here. So that's the problem. So I'm going to go back to save everything. Files, file, save all, and rerun. Stop and rerun. We are not out of the woods yet until everything works. So let's just go one more time. Okay, so it's running. So I'm coming back here. Click order 1 now. Wait, no. I'm going to order like maybe computer keyboard or maybe computer mouse. Yes, place order. And you can see perfectly it worked right here. And we place order for 1. So let me just refresh. So you can see $5.99. This is reduced to $5.99. You can see for yourself. Let me place order for women's shoes for my wife. I'm going to place the order. Yes, and it works. So if I refresh this page, you can see women's shoe goes down to $1.99. So everything worked. So I'd like to stop here. This is the end of this course, CQRS and Event Sourcing with Axon Framework. Hopefully, you've understood this concept to much extent. I'd like to recommend you take some time, possibly repeat this course again, because it takes several efforts for you to understand or get a grip on Axon Framework. It's a technology that is relatively new, but I promise you that once you get the hang of it, it becomes really so easy. And that's why I've laid out in my website the step-by-step way to do it. I'd like to thank you for viewing. I'd like to give you a kudos if you've come up to this point. I'd like to encourage you not to give up, because that is how it works with programming. If you have any challenges whatsoever, let me know. Also, share this course across your network, and join International Computer Programmers. This is a group that is made up of professionals who are learning programming and also assisting others to learn programming. For me, I remain Kindton the Tech Pro, and you can be sure that I'm always there for you.